In 1942, Albert Einstein was teaching at Oxford University. One day, he just gave an exam of physics to his senior class, a physics student. He was walking on the campus with his assistant, and all of a sudden, the assistant asked, "Doctor, this exam which you just gave to the senior class of yours, isn't that exactly the same exam you gave to them 1 year ago?" Yeah, it's exactly the same. "But doctor, how could you possibly do that?" "Well, the answers have changed." The answers have changed. In other words, what is true for 1942 is even more true today. We live in a world where the questions might be the same, but the answers have changed. And in other words, what has got you here will no longer get you there. And if you want to have results that you have never had before, well, you need to start doing things you have never done before. The key question for today is, of course, is there a method to the madness? Is there a way that each of us can do the impossible to truly create dramatic results? The good news is that the answer to that question is yes. Because what I am going to explain today is when it comes to high performance, why the majority is always wrong, and how you can use that to get everything you can get out of everything you have got. First, let me introduce you to something interesting, an interesting observation. When people, teams, organizations, whenever they hit a wall, they tend to do one of two things. They either do the same things or they do less of the same things. But what you very seldom see is that they start to do different things instead. It's interesting. If you look at the data, approximately 3% of people are inclined to even do different things. The remaining 97% continues to smash into the wall like some crazy energy bunny on steroids. Why is that? To understand what's going on here, we need to ask another question. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of thinking? And if you ask that question to a brain scientist, the brain scientist will say, well, the purpose of thinking is to stop thinking. The purpose of thinking is to stop thinking. Why does she mean by that? Here's the thing. Thinking is a very high energy activity. It takes a lot of energy to think, so whenever we think, we try to think as short as possible, and then we return to the automatic pilot over 95% of our life. We run onto automatic pilot. For example, if you have ever driven a car and then realize, whoa, what did I do in the past half hours? That's the brain on automatic pilot. Another example, many of you right now are listening to me on automatic pilot, and I know who you are. Here's the thing, if your brain is on automatic pilot, this leads to what scientists call mental myopia, also known as tunnel vision. If you have tunnel vision, that's a bit of a problem because it confuses people about their own performance. This is the reason that many people go through life acting like a mediocre race car driver who sits in the car, looks in his rear view mirror and sees his competition and is so far behind that they think they are first. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, we tend to think inside the box. And the box is a very good metaphor here. So let me draw a box. If you take a close look at the box, you see that the boundaries of this box are very well defined. We think inside the defined boundaries. I will give an example. One boundary is a legal boundary, and we think within the legal framework. I will give you an example. Very few of you would think of stealing the wallet of the next person next to you in order to fund your next cool startup. At least That's what I hope. We think in legal boundaries, but there are also other boundaries as well. We think in technological boundaries, in physical boundaries, but we also think in moral boundaries. This is why we think inside the box. At least that's what we think. Because the reality is that the box in which we think looks more like this. For those of you in the back who cannot see it, the reason is this is a very small box. Let me illustrate how small this box can be. For example, if I would say tonight, let's have something to eat, have dinner tonight, what could be the option for that? You probably come up with, let's buy some pizza, go to a restaurant, cook at home, all kinds of cool ideas. But I believe that very few of you would raise your hands and say, hey, let's go to the highway close by, see if we can pick up some dead animals on the side of the roads and prepare ourselves a crispy dinner. That's a disturbing thought, but here's the funny thing. For many in the world, this would be a perfectly normal response. Nothing's wrong with that. What it shows is that the box in which we think is actually very, very small. If you take a closer look at your industry or professional field, you also think inside a very small box. The boundary of this box, they are called industry standards or industry norms. For example, if you are in a restaurant business, then the industry standard is that people come to your establishment, they eat, and then they pay. And that's the standards. That's how everyone's doing it. Another example, if you are in the banking business, this norm is that people give you money, you say thank you very much, and you give the money to someone else. I mean, that's banking. Those are standards, those are the norms in the industry and professional fields. But this is what you need to know. The word norm is an abbreviation for normal. In other words, if you do what everyone else is doing, you get results that everyone else is getting. And those are normal results. And the thing is, what we are after today are extraordinary results. So the key question is, of course, how can you kick yourself out of the box? This very small box of your industry or professional field, and move to the happy place where cool innovation happens. How can you do that? Let me introduce you to the curious case of the London taxi drivers. If you want to become a taxi driver in London, you need to know the entire city by heart, and this is called the knowledge. You can imagine it takes years to get the knowledge in your head, and that's a bit of a problem if you want to rapidly expand your taxi business. Brilliant, ladies and gentlemen. This sounds like a very cute story, but there's much more than meets the eye, because what we have found is that extraordinary results happen when people decide to finally break the standards or the norms in their industry or professional fields. You see this over and over again. For example, if you would have a furniture business and one day you would decide to no longer assemble furniture for your customers, probably you would end up with a company called IKEA. Customer service, how can I help you? Could you assemble this furniture for me? No. Another example, if you owned a computer business and one day you decide to no longer sell your big computer using a physical store, probably you would end up with a company called Dell Computers. Ladies and gentlemen, what it tells us, there's a method to the madness. And by understanding that the majority is always wrong when it comes to high performance, finally you have the opportunity to quit fixing things and move to a massive innovation instead. Ladies and gentlemen, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once said that the object of life is not to side with the majority, but the object of life is to escape finding oneself joining the ranks of clinical insane. If you do what everyone else is doing, you are not distinguish yourself and you are probably stuck. This is why when it comes to high performance, the majority is always wrong. This is what we know. We know that 3% of people are able to achieve extraordinary results. Each of you can become part of those by deciding, as today, to break your industry standards and to break your industry norm. The alternative, of course, is that you become part of the 97% who in the end work for those 3%. As of today, that choice is completely yours. Thank you for listening.